welcome back. We're so glad to have you again. And if you were unable to join us yesterday and just tuning in today, we are thrilled that you are able to be with us today and joining us for a great couple of hours together, where we will be learning and engaging in some great conversation with some amazing speakers. And with that, it is my honor and privilege right now to introduce our panel, who will be speaking about pathways to inclusion. Some really amazing folks are on this panel, some who you may know already, some who may be new to you. They are all individuals who I've worked closely with in many different capacities, and I'm so glad that they could be here with us today. So we have with us Dr. Mark Friedman, who many of you may know from some past interactions with NACDD. Dr. Friedman is an adjunct associate professor at the City University of New York with a focus on disability studies. His mission is to empower individuals with disabilities through self-advocacy, policy making, and community programs. Currently, he's training over 3,500 people on person-centered planning in Nebraska through an online platform, and has established an online support network named Disabilities Zoom for professionals, staff, and caregivers of individuals with IDD. Dr. Friedman's work includes several studies and training programs across different states, including Michigan, who we will be featuring today, where he conducted focus groups on beyond tokenism and evaluated the Michigan Consumer Cooperative Program. He also conducted a national study to identify best practices for increasing the participation of people with developmental disabilities in policy-making entities. He has collaborated with several organizations, including the Georgia Advocacy Office, Nebraska and Michigan DD Councils, the Administration for Community Living, ACL, the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid, which is known as CMS, and the National Museum on Disability Rights. Dr. Friedman has a doctoral degree in organizational leadership from the Union Institute and University, and his work has been presented in 22 states. We are so lucky to have Dr. Friedman today. Along with Dr. Friedman, we have Dr. Ruthie Marie Beckwith. Ruthie Marie is a national consultant. She is committed to helping people with disabilities achieve greater autonomy in their daily lives. She is the founder and principal partner of Blue Fire Consulting, which provides consulting services across the US in areas of self-determination, community organizing, leadership development, and self-employment. She has served as the founder and executive director of 2 statewide nonprofit associations, the Association of Micro Boards in Tennessee and Cooperatives, and People First of Tennessee. She also teaches advocacy and disability history at the City University of New York as adjunct faculty, and has served as adjunct faculty at Vanderbilt University and Middle Tennessee State University as well. Dr. Beckwith received her PhD and MS degrees in special ed from George Peabody College, and her BS degree, that's a Bachelor of Science, from the State University of New York at Geneseo. I hope I pronounced that correctly. She conducted person-centered planning sessions and trained PCP facilitators across the country as the founder and director of TAMC. She is committed to grassroots approaches to empowerment and resource mobilization. Oops. And she's helped people with disabilities develop and implement strategies for greater autonomy in their daily lives. Some of you may also know her because she has served as executive director of TASH, a national organization in the disability space that has worked very closely with NACDD. We also have with us today David Taylor, who I have known for quite some time as well. It's great to have you with us today, David. David is a co-trainer for the project, serves on the National Board of Directors of TASH, and is a former member of the Michigan Developmental Disability Council and the former vice chair on the board of directors of Community Living Services. As a motivational speaker from Oakland County, Michigan, David is passionate about empowering individuals with disabilities to make their own decisions, advocate for themselves, and learn the power of self-determination. He has provided public testimony at the Michigan Capitol and has served on numerous committees to advocate for the rights and needs of people with developmental disabilities. David is certified as a peer support mentor and a trainer consultant, providing training, curriculum development, presentations, facilitation, and consultation. He played a crucial role in organizing the Michigan Developmental Disabilities Council 2013 project Beyond Tokenism, People with Complex Needs in Leadership Roles, and has presented the results from the National Beyond Tokenism study on board and committee inclusion at national conferences. So glad you're here with us today, David. We also have with us today Sarah Carmody. Sarah is from Kalamazoo, Michigan, and currently sits on the board for Integrated Services of Kalamazoo and is a member of the Women's League of Voters Kalamazoo area. She is an alternate on the SABE board, Self-Advocates Becoming Empowered, SABE, and was the 2021 recipient of NACDD's Betty Williams Champions of Equal Opportunity Award. Sarah is a trainer for the Center for Youth Voice Youth Choice, which is an incredible project helping young self-advocates find alternatives to guardianship. Sarah is employed by the ARC of Kalamazoo. Welcome to all four of you, and thank you for being here with us today. And I will now turn it over to Dr. Mark Friedman to begin our session.
Thank you immensely. I feel like we almost walk on water. I really your,
lots of acronyms and lots of accolades.
Your wonderful introduction. We are just really proud to have a team of people who are working on this. I want to welcome you. I want to express our appreciation to all of you for coming. Basically, we have almost every DD council in the country present in the territories, and that is really a huge opportunity. What we're trying to do, and what the purpose here is, really to have people with intellectual development disabilities serve on boards, committees, councils. Councils have done the best job in the whole country of having people serve on them. To many extent, that's because of the DD Act that mandated that there be a third in 1980, that there be a third of the people serving on councils. First, it was just parents, parents representing people, and then early it became people with intellectual development disabilities serving on the councils. Part of the national study that you'll hear about, we interviewed not only every council surveyed and interviewed councils in the country, but all of the university centers and all of the protection advocacy, disability rights, and many other groups. And none of them even came close to having a third of the people with development disability serving on their board. So you all are doing a fabulous job in this area. So our focus today is really not on presence, but on participation. So what is it that you can do as council staff, council members, council participants to help people be more included, to help people, in the words of Dr. Wolf-Wolfenberger, to be more valued citizens as part of this group. And that's what we're about. That's what we're working about. One other issue is that we'll talk a little bit more about it, but one of our work is really having people with more significant disabilities serving and being involved. And so, real issue is not just how many people, but are you including people who have both diverse and also more significant needs to be on councils and whatnot. So with that, let me start. So I have a little bit of background pieces. The chat box, as you heard Robin talk about, you can put in. We have two chat moderators, so we'll make sure any questions that you have are raised that will get to be answered. The closed captioning you heard about is available. We ask people to be on camera the whole time. I know people don't generally, some people don't like to, but it helps us to be better presenters. It helps us when we can see other people. So we ask you to do that, particularly in the breakout rooms. It's really a sense of isolation of people in the breakout rooms and just seeing screens. We'll have a break midway through. The closed caption button is on the bottom. It's active, but you do have to hit that in order to get that working. So what is the training about? What are we trying to accomplish? Really is, how can people be on councils and be more effective? And what can you do? What can people do themselves? So the expectations for the training we have, we're very fortunate to have a 2-hour block of time. We'll be going into the breakout rooms twice. So we ask that you be an active participant in the breakout rooms, that you actually share some of your own thoughts, some of your experiences, and engagement for deep learning. And deep learning is really the idea that if you engage yourself, if you talk to people, if you think about the things, if you work on the things, people learn more than simply being what some of our members call a bump on a log or just looking at a screen. So our agenda today ultimately really is about nothing about us without us, which is really the whole philosophy of people being involved, of our disability efforts that we're about. So it's welcome, which we're doing right now, an overview I'm giving you. We're going to talk about the elements, the 6 elements of inclusive practices. We have discussion questions in the breakout rooms, and then we'll see with some of the other things that we have available and are doing with some of the other councils and groups that we've worked. We've had a great work with Michigan, and we have actually just finished training 6 managed care organizations of almost $300 million operations that really oversee in Michigan. Managed care organizations are really front and center on who gets services and whatnot. So this is really brought to you or developed, and we really want to give a shout out both to the Michigan and the Pennsylvania Developmental Disability Councils. Long ago, almost 10 years, we began with the Pennsylvania DD Council. I hope that we have Lisa Tessler is here from the council, the executive director today. And we began with what being on councils, and many people had some experience. And we began with the idea of what was called at that time, and some people refer to it, meaningful participation. And we hired 6 people with developmental disabilities, intellectual disabilities, and we all sat together in a room and said, okay, what can we do about this? And the first thing people said was, we don't know what that meaningful participation means, but we feel like tokens. And that's where we've come with the beyond tokenism. And what our purpose today is get beyond that tokenism. Many of you feel like have felt like tokens when you're maybe in a glee club or school or something, but this is really where people get on boards, get on committees, get on councils, but they feel nobody listens to them. The Michigan DD Council, we want to shout out that really is fundamental for funding the national survey that we did. And then again, that we've been working with them recently on boards and committees that are nonprofit organizations in Michigan. So we thank you for that, and particularly Vandela, who isn't able to be here today. We want to give a big shout out to Michigan Development Disabilities Institute, the USEF, Wayne State University. We have 13 volunteers from there today who are doing the moderator rooms and helping us have a deeper conversation. So thank you to all of them, and you'll be able to meet them as we get into the breakout rooms. We have a big training team. It takes a village. You've heard about description of, I think, all of us. I just want to mention Ann Formeller and Mary Angus, who are co-hosts, and we'll be looking at the chat box and making sure that we get your questions answered and things that we're doing. And we really appreciate having so many people be with us.
And David,
we're going to hear from both David and Sarah talking about, you've heard about the sort of the profile and their description. They both have a huge level of experience about being boards and committees, having been able to talk to people, having learned, and having had the experience. So with that, we're going to hear from David Taylor about what does the board inclusion mean. David, you're on.
What board inclusion means is for there's really people not board inclusion means when a person is when they don't have a voice and really not they are not at the table, and also they are a token on there and just really trying to figure out.
Oh no.
Oh, I think you froze up there, David. Let's go to Sarah. Hopefully we'll get David back again. The limitations of technology, we love and hear it. Sarah, can you help us with these questions?
Sure. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Okay. What does board inclusion mean? Board inclusion means when an individual is put on a board that is involving people with lives, or yeah, it's when a person is put on a board with people, the work for people with disabilities, and it influences people's lives.
I
and they
think
can
from
actually
too as well,
take.
just being a person.
David, we weren't able to hear you and now you're muted and go ahead, Sarah. We'll
Okay.
So Sarah, why is it important to have people with disabilities on a board?
The reason why it is important is because the work of the board that the person is elected to is important because it affects people's lives, and people with lived experience can actually contribute to the work of the board.
And how does that move us beyond tokenism?
Well, because when you have people that with lived experience that are on the board, they can help the board understand what needs to be done, and may hopefully move the board in the right direction to complete its work.
Right, that's perfect, Sarah.
Thanks,
let's,
Sarah.
So let's go to the next slide. I think Mark has passed the baton to me. Sarah, can you introduce this speaker who talks about why are inclusive boards important to organizations?
Yes. This person here is Peter Burns. He's gonna shed some light on the topic of why are inclusive boards important to organizations.
Great, thank you.
You're really going to adequately represent the interests and work with people with intellectual and developmental disabilities and their families. They have to be at the table. And the parents and the siblings need to be at the table, and the people with intellectual and developmental disabilities need to be at the table as well. So you have to take the plunge, and then you have to take the time to think through the process that you use to bring people on the board and really be true to what the needs of the organization are.
And Sarah, what about this person? I think you recognize.
This person is Betty Williams. She's a self-advocate that served on self-advocate. She's a past president of Self-Advocates Becoming Empowered. She's going to shed some light also on why inclusive boards are important to organizations.
Thank you.
I think a lot of times that's where we can get our voices heard and we can do the best work that we can do. By connecting with other people and making a difference in people's lives. That's why I do it, trying to make a difference in the lives of people with disability. I just think that one of the most important things any board can do is include people with disabilities on any kind of topic. It doesn't have to be topics relating to disability. It can be boards that have anything to do with our community.
So Sarah and David are going to be in the spotlight now. They're going to walk us through this true-false test. So I'm going to turn it over to you guys, and let's see how. I'm not sure who's answering the questions today, but we'll see how they do.
So I'm
David,
answering the questions, and Sarah's going to read them.
Okay. First one, and these are true and false. Individuals with disabilities can serve as the chairperson of a board of directors.
True.
Okay. Board meetings are too long and boring for individuals with disabilities to get much out of them.
False.
Only people who can read and write can serve on a board or committee.
False.
Okay. The voices of individuals with disabilities influence the decisions the board or committee makes.
True.
Mentors tell people what to say and manipulate their opinion.
False.
Correct. Color coordinating material is childlike and too much work.
False.
Correct. Organizations, climate, and culture changes when individuals with disabilities are involved in leadership roles.
True.
Correct. If someone breaks down and cries at the board meeting, the best thing to do is to ignore them.
False.
Correct.
So thanks, guys. I think you did a fabulous job. Looks like you got 100, David.
Mhm.
So congratulations. You passed. One thing that
Yeah.
we didn't mention about David is he's at the
What?
You're muted. You're muted, Mary.
Okay, well, I'm glad that happened. So thank you, David and Sarah. You've scored 100. David has nailed it once again. And I appreciate you guys doing this. One thing we didn't share about David earlier is that he is at the very moment taking a break from his fellowship orientation he's doing a fellowship program at Harvard. So maybe later or in the breakout room, he'll have a chance to tell people a little bit more about that. But I'm impressed. So I hope he has a lot of things that he'll be able to share with us as it goes through that program this summer. So next, I'm going to have Sarah tell us. Sarah, can you tell us what Dr. King had to say about tokens and tokenisms?
Yes. He who sells you the token instead of the coin always retains the power to revoke its worth and to command you to get off the bus before you have reached your destination. Tokenism is a promise to pay. Democracy in its finest sense is payment.
Right. Thank you.
Mhm.
Next. So basically, Sarah, you talked about tokenism and that it's really the practice of only making a perfunctory effort to do a particular thing by recruiting one or two people from an underrepresented group to give the appearance of inclusion. And of course, this applies to any marginalized group, not just people with disabilities. And as we think about intersectionality now, that there are many people who represent diverse groups as they come to the table. So it's always important to consider those factors. Inclusion at its finest sense is deliberately aiming to involve all types of people. So we really think about who are we inviting to the table and how can we best support them so they can do their best work and you as a board can do your best work. Next. So the training and information you're receiving today, it's based on our experience. It's based on the experience of self-advocates who have served on boards like Betty and David and Sarah and Tia and Nancy and all of the self-advocates that we've worked with over the years. But it's also based on the national study that we did. Mark mentioned this study at the beginning of our introduction, and it was funded by the Michigan DD Council. It was a national study where we set out to find out how many people with significant disabilities were serving on boards of directors. And what we meant by significant is that they had really complex support needs. They needed respirators, they needed, guidance, they had to be shifted around, they had lots of barriers that came with them, and boards would have to understand how to support them so they could do their best work. The results of the national survey were published in an issue of Inclusion, which is published by the American Association of Individuals with Developmental Disabilities. This issue of Inclusion covered several articles that we published, a literature review that really outlined what we knew at the time was happening with people with complex needs. And also David was the co-author of an article that reflects what tokenism feels like for people with disabilities. The national study results also showed that DD councils, as Mark mentioned earlier, had the highest number of people. And in some cases, we interviewed 5 councils that had 3 or more people, and actually 4 councils, I believe, that actually had 5 people with complex needs that they were supporting to be boards of directors and boards of directors within leadership roles. And so we found that, if people had the proper supports, anyone can be an effective board member. And what we found in doing that, in all of the interviews that Mark talked about and all of the fancy research algorithms we pushed through, we really found that when you have 2 or more, and really ideally 3 or more people serving on a board, that begins to open the board up to begin to think and see those people as individuals. When you have one person, you have just that one person's perspective. And so having the perspective of other people really adds to the richness of the conversation. Also, having 3 or more people really helps the board understand that there are individual differences amongst people with disabilities, and that people have different support needs and people have different ideas about how best to help people live the lives that they want to live. Finally, what we found were the strategies, and that's what we're going to be covering today. Today's session is an introduction to the research. It's also an introduction to the things that we learned. Next slide. So from the research, we found that there are really 7 conclusive areas, and this is evidence-based work, really largely on the work that your councils have been doing since the number of people on councils increased. We found that people looked at authentic membership. How did they feel to be, did they feel like they were real members? And what did councils do to support people to be and feel like they were truly equal, authentic members of a board? We found that they needed support in deliberate communication in order to be able to share their ideas and understand what the board's work is about. We found ways that DD councils and other organizations had found and identified those to enhance full participation. Also, ways to meaningfully contribute to the work that the board is doing, and ultimately to find what everyone wants when they're serving on a board, not just the people with disabilities, but all of us. We get involved in organizations because we want to have an impact. We want to have influence on how the organization is carrying out its work. And through all of this, we found one of the most effective ways that people get supported on boards is through mentorship, and also the supports that mentors and organizations provide themselves. And so those are the areas that our research found. And from that, we were able to create 7 training modules that we took other boards in Michigan and around the country through to be able to help them enhance the work that they're doing in these areas. Next slide. The research that we did was initially based on the findings that Christopher Fredette, who is a researcher from Canada, had been doing and found through his work on improving the representation of women on boards of directors. And he really found that, of course, across time, when women in larger numbers served on boards of directors, they ended up having, the organizations ended up, and the individuals on those boards ended up having what we refer to, and he referred to, as transformational inclusion. That people were really transformed when people were truly and fully included. And individuals were transformed because people came to the board wanting a voice to encourage change, and they wanted to gain acceptance or establish bonds. And the ultimate result of transformational inclusion is that they felt they had an authentic exchange of ideas and concepts and needs and ways of helping people in their community. Boards of directors found initially that they wanted to have people with disabilities, either it was mandated to have people with disabilities on their board, or their funders were requiring them to have representation of the constituency group that they were working with. And so for them, it was an opportunity to gain access to resources and to improve legitimacy. improving legitimacy when you're out in the community, when you're meeting with legislators, that you have the true voices of the people that our tax dollars are going to help support and shape and promote their lives. And the board members of the boards of directors found that they had a shared understanding of the people who were serving on the board. It enhanced their understanding of people's potential so that people became more optimistic, people began to have higher expectations of what people with disabilities in general can do because they had representatives of the community showing them and leading the way. And finally, the board of directors itself in their meetings altered their culture and structure in order to make those things happen. So this is the model we use to develop the materials that we're showing you today. And today we developed this particular module to walk people through this training and to give people a taste of the different areas and the different types of supports that we found people could receive and were receiving in order to be effective. Next slide. So I think we've talked about this a little bit, but I think David kind of blanked out. So David, I'm going to ask you first. Why is being on a board important?
Being on a board is important is because you have it gives you the opportunity. It gives a person the opportunity to really be at the table and really focus on really how to help the board and the members of the board and help themselves as well to really grow as a advocate and also as a person in the community, and really focus on how we can change the values and to help to really focus on rebranding the organization as well, and really pushing the envelope and stepping outside of the box.
Sarah, I think you talked about this earlier. Do you have anything to add to why being on a board is important?
Being on a board is important because when you're on a board, when an individual with a disability is selected to a board, it can help the board move in the direction it needs to make sure everybody's needs are met.
Great, thank you. So I'm going to take this back to Mark and ask Mark to share with us what the individual outcomes were. If you remember back to the crazy little Venn diagram with all the circles, there were individual outcomes and there are also organizational outcomes. So what were the individual outcomes, Mark? And maybe Sarah would read the beginning quote by Eloise for us.
Okay, you want me to read the quote?
Yes, please.
It helped me a lot. How to work with people, how to ask questions, how to feel good about myself. Eloise Woods.
Thank you, Sarah. Eloise was the former president of People First of Alabama, and we got to work with her a lot. If you think about this quote, excuse me, it has a number of things in it. It has the piece of making a contribution to the council, the committee, and also having an impact on herself. And so that's where we found that there are multiple levels of impact. So what are some of the, we're going to talk about individual outcomes and an organizational outcome. So what are some of the individual outcomes that people themselves, excuse me for a minute, cough here. So around self-advocacy, people gain leadership skills, people gain stronger experiences. One of the things that people gain by being on a group, it's really probably one of the most significant, powerful ways of leadership development. Many of the organizations don't realize the impact and kind of in many ways say, oh, many times we heard organizations say, we don't have someone skilled enough to be on our committee. We don't know somebody how they can do it or what they can do. This is where people learn by and large some experiential learning. Increased self-confidence, you hear Eloise talking about expanded interpersonal skills as you work with committees and subcommittees. Most people, particularly with intellectual and developmental disabilities, learn through experiences, and probably most of us, probably all of us do, as opposed to book reading or something. Creation of social networking opportunities. You heard anybody who were on here early, David and Sarah both connecting up with many other people who are at NACD. and you get connected to people, you learn from other people, you gain strength from other people, you gain support. Expanding leadership roles is really a critical piece that people learn by being, and as all of us do. You're on the glee club, you play baseball, you're on some student council. You have these kind of opportunities that over time you do it. You see it with our politicians, not to be political in a say, but just in terms of government. Typically people are on the school board, and then they go and, they might run for legislature, and then they go for the state. So these are developmental. Enhanced status within the community. When somebody's able to say, I'm going to a board meeting, I'm on a board, that's something that in America is highly valued. And a broad range of roles within and outside the organization, of people getting more opportunities than just simply sitting on, being a council member, being a board member, as people can get opportunities to go speaking, get opportunities to get out in the community. So these are some very important things that individual people get out.
Mark, I wanted, if you could go, yeah, I just wanted to jump in real quick with an anecdote about the enhanced status in the community. As some of you know, I did a lot of microboard development work. And one of the people that I worked with was an individual in West Tennessee. And when we were forming his microboard, his mother, I think, invited the entire community to come to his person-centered plan, his path. And later on, the board would have this huge Christmas party. And everybody, and I think the whole community, would come to his Christmas party because it was also his birthday. So anyways, I drive over to West Tennessee, and I get to the restaurant, and I get out of the car, and I find my way into the room where all these people have gathered. And I sit down at a table with two little kids sitting in front of me. And I'm sitting in front of them, and they're lovely, 7 or 8 years old. And I say who I am, and they say who they are. And they say, "Are you on the board?" And I said, "No, but I actually kind of helped get the board together." And they looked at me and they said, "Well, our dad is on the board." And what that showed me was not only did the person, my friend who had the microboard, get status from having a community member on the board, that community member also got status by being on the individual's microboard. So it is a two-way street that people do get enhanced. Individuals, not only the people with disabilities, but the individuals who don't have disabilities on the board also have individual outcomes. So back to you, Mark.
We want to hear from David and Sarah of why being on a board is important. We've heard you talk a little bit, but we didn't get you fully, David, with some of the technical things. Could you help people understand some of the board importance? David?
I think we already did that, Mark.
Okay.
Yeah, we did.
There we go. This is the one. No, go back to one slide. This is the next question. Back one slide, please. There we go.
Wrong question, David. So can you speak to, and then we'll have Sarah, how it helps the organization. So this is really focused on the organization. What we're trying to do is first the individuals, but now how the board, the council itself benefits from having people participate. David?
So what I think is what helps the organization is, I know from my experience, really just being at the table and really trying to change how this organization looks when they decided to have people just go where I know from my experience, I had really seen a big change when you get involved in when you help them change their mission and their values, and not just that, but help them seeing it in a different way. Will really open their eyes to really, open the doors up. I think what helps is when the conversations get to talking, when everybody talks and really focus on how we can help each other to change the atmosphere and really focus on how we can grow as an organization, but just have a respect level for each other.
Thanks, David. Sarah, can you add to that from your own experiences that you've been on many committees and boards and groups?
Oh, I think when you have a person with lived experience on a board, it helps to clarify the need for the board's work. It helps the board like know what it can help the board understand what kind of work needs to be done.
Thanks, Sarah. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about the research that we did. You heard Ruth and Marie talk about it quite a bit. But these are the results. We had 247 organizations across the country that we surveyed. We did direct one-on-one interviews with 45 of them. And these are the outcomes that people felt that they had by having more people be on the council members, be on the boards. So the adoption of person-centered practice, a number of councils talked about that over time. They modified, actually it was in their state plans, having people with disabilities engaged in all planning on all levels. So moving from just being a council member, a board member, to being, many councils have subcommittees, many had review committees that people would be on. Increased emphasis on community inclusion, again, changing some of the goals, changing some of the focus that some of the grants had. Best example really here was from Liz Obermeyer, who was is currently with the American, the Disability Rights AACD, but was co-chairperson of the Maryland DD Council at the time, and talked about having a goal, a project, grants around shelter workshops, and her raising the issue, almost a quote of, you know, her and her friends didn't want people to be in shelter workshops. And so having the council outcome change over time. Increased quality and satisfaction, decreased use of segregated supports. I just talked about that of, you know, the shelter workshops, but also certainly we moved past, for the most part, institutions, but, you know, really thinking more about what segregation means. And a big part of changing the organization and the priorities. So really as people play more of a role, so it's more than just simply being present in a room, but having active roles, many places becoming officers of the organization. Change in organizational structure is really related to the way that people had their meetings, doing more of the work in subcommittees, because in subcommittees or there is more time for people to have understanding and more effort. And so doing more of the work in subcommittees. And COVID certainly changed that, people being on Zoom and whatnot, but being able to have more time that people can dig into what is being expressed, have time to understand, the committee to have time to take the time it takes to help people be really included. Increased resources or funding. There were several councils that you know, talked about, and actually boards and providers talked about helping get having advocacy efforts with the state legislators locally to get increased fundings or to reduce funding cuts at the time. As we all know, over different years, there have been threats of that. Having people with disabilities themselves be part of the advocacy effort. Expanded influence with policymakers, as boards, committees, councils particularly felt very strongly that when they had people with disabilities at the table going to talk to policymakers, that the policymakers were much more open and listening and heard what people said. Expanded views of capabilities. The council members felt that other council members, you know, in addition to the advocates and whatnot, many councils are made up, not all councils are made up of the governmental departments who may not have spent time or really know people with disabilities very much. And so people having a higher expectation of people as they intermingle, as people break bread together, as people share time together. People with disabilities being hired, having more jobs that people are actually doing. In government with bureaucracies, that can be really difficult. But I know, for example, long ago, I was vice chairperson of the Pennsylvania Council, and we worked through being able to hire the first person that the council had ever hired with disabilities, and what that took. It's easier now, but what that took in the beginning to be able to work through the standards and whatnot. People with disabilities being a part of quality monitoring improvement efforts. Many more monitoring efforts today have people with disabilities on the committees. The Council on Quality Living does national reviews of people. There are local people. There are many states that do, but involving those teams was actually having people with developmental disabilities serving on them. So those are really some of the things that are the organizational pieces. And David, you're going to introduce, or Sarah, you're going to introduce Tia.
Me?
Yes.
Are you sure? I did the first two. Okay. This so transformational outcomes are changes in the organization's culture where everyone is valued as key to the organization's success. And former SAVE president Tia Nellis will shed some light on this topic.
Thank you, Sarah.
I think you really need to be included in every part of the board to be really successful, not only in just being there, sitting there, but and part of the executive committee, part of full parts of the board. When they're going out to do some legislation, actually being asked to be a part of that. Not just the people who speak really well and all the professionals, but to be fully included. And I think the most important thing that you can do is get that chairperson to really buy into helping make sure that the person with disability is included on the board. We figured out that once you have the support of the chairperson on the board or committee, others will follow by example, by role models, and learning how to include somebody to be a full member of that board or committee.
Thanks, Tia. It's always been one of my, we lost a little bit of the emotion there, but that's always been one of my favorite expressions from Tia. That had the opportunity to work with extensively is the importance of the chairperson in setting leadership and setting the values of what's important there. David, you're going to introduce Nancy?
Nancy is the former executive director on the National Association of State DD Services.
The presence of people with disabilities, particularly cognitive disabilities, on the board is that it changes the whole dynamic of how people interact with each other in a very positive way. Because if you truly make an effort to include and listen to people who have a cognitive disability, intellectual disability, traumatic brain injury, whatever that disability is that affects the speed of communication, the speed of comprehension, if you adjust the meeting and the interaction, slow it down, pace the conversation so that people can really participate, it changes the environment positively for everybody participating. So it slows it down for everybody. It makes it more rational and understandable for everybody. And by slowing it down and pacing it differently, you allow people the space and time to consider the emotional content of what's being said and the emotional state that other people are in. So the communication among everybody is deeper, more meaningful, more respectful, and I think everybody feels better about what happens in the meeting. It's not unlike what we say about the classroom, that when you make the classroom a friendly place for the child with a disability, it becomes a friendlier place for all children in the classroom. And I believe the same thing happens if you truly change the process and accommodate people, pace things so that they have an opportunity to participate and listen and process the information according to the speed that they need to do it. So I think it makes for a better meeting for everybody.
One of the things that we find, as all of you do, it's almost like the story of the curb cut, done for people with disabilities and then people on bicycles and people in strollers, and all kinds of people find it really, really useful. So a lot of these practices are really good meeting practices that benefit everybody. So we're now going to go into our breakout rooms. We are really excited about this. We have the moderators in every room. Some of you are going to stay in the general meeting room right here, but most everybody be going out in the breakout rooms. And for any of you who haven't done, the magic of Zoom is that zip, and you'll be off in a breakout room with the moderators and in about 10 or 12 people. And we'll be working on this question. So the question is, why do you serve on a council, a committee, or board? What we're asking you to do is think about yourself, your own experience, and for a moment to step out of the people that you're trying to help. So with that, we're all going to spend 15 minutes. We'll be off in the breakout room. If we have technical issues, anybody can leave the room and come back. We hope that you'll get in the right room and we'll be off. So with that, we ready to send everybody in the breakout rooms?
Mark, it's going to take another couple of minutes.
Okay.
Because the automatic population didn't work and I'm doing some manual assigning. So just wax wise for a few minutes.
So I think I'm going to jump in then. I'll do an impromptu question. David, can you share, and Sarah, this is the question, so you guys have a couple of seconds to think about it. Can you share a story of when you really felt good about being on a board, a particular meeting or a chance that you had to really say something to a board you were on or made a difference? Either one of you can answer. Sure.
Sure. Well, it was when I was on the Michigan DD Council and on TASH. I think having this, knowing a lot of the members on the council and really just being comfortable, I think for me, in talking about certain things that came up and really super excited to really help change what was going on. And for on TASH, having a mentor, I think that would help me. Because I think on the Michigan DD Council, I had a mentor as well. I think that would ease my me being nervous, and on TASH as well. I think really just having communications with the executive director and with the president of the board and having a mentor, I think that would make me really enjoy my time on both them boards, and sorry, and really just being super excited to be involved in a lot of the stuff that was changing.
Okay.
Okay, do you want to add anything?
I know when I first got elected to the Self-Advocates of Michigan board, I was really excited. I was nervous, but because I didn't know what to expect, but I was kind of excited to be elected to be on that board. And I was really I was so excited to help and start doing the work of the board.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You're on mute, Mark. Yes, you're on mute.
Let me come back to you. When was the time that you were excited to serve on a board that made a difference, a board that you were, or council, the board that you were sitting on? I'll tell mine, sitting on the Pennsylvania Council.
Well, I think my favorite board that I was on the P&A board here in Tennessee for a number of years, and then I rotated off, but they asked me to come back on the PAMI Council. And the PAMI Council was, and those of you who are, in the DD network, the PAMI councils are there. And I really felt like it was the first time that I was being recognized as someone with lived experience. And not many people know, or I don't always disclose that I have, that I am a mental health consumer. But I think I was really excited to also feel like Sarah said, that I could really have an impact on the mental health system here in Tennessee and really feel like, I was with my tribe, people that understood who I was and really were dedicated to helping solve some of the problems and issues that people with mental health issues in Tennessee were facing. So I think David's just popped on. Mark, you might have to wait for your story.
Okay, this is Dave. Sorry for the delay in this, but we just had to manually assign a whole bunch of people to rooms. If you're someone who needs to have cart closed captioning, cart captioning, as soon as you find yourself in one or another of the rooms, go ahead and leave that room and you'll end up in the main room with the cart captioner. So if you need cart captioning, just leave the room that you've been dropped into and you'll be in the main room with the cart captioner. Okay, so we're going to go into 15-minute rooms. And again, the question is, why do you serve on a council, committee, or board? Why have you chosen to do that?
As we move forward, really we're going to talk about the 6 elements that we talked about. You heard Ruthie Marie talk about a lot that are the pieces that make up the pieces that we're talking about, the authentic membership of people being fully included in communication and all of these. We're going to go through these with a little bit more detail, putting meat on the bones, and talk about how you do some of these things and what's so important. We're going to have a back and forth with both David and Sarah. So David, we're going to start out with you around authentic membership. Can you talk a little bit, share a little bit with us on that? Can we get you back on screen and unmuted?
Authentic membership is when you have a person with when you are an active member of a board or community to really focus on how to help the organization and the board and really be a asset to them.
Thanks. And Sarah?
I think membership, individuals feel like they are equal members. Yeah, being on a board with lived experience, I feel like I'm an equal member because I'm contributing to helping out with the work.
Thanks, Sarah. Go ahead, Sarah. Sorry.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. I'm sorry, Sarah.
Because it'll help the board have a better perception of what needs to be done.
Thanks. So some of the pieces, specifically this from our research, recruitment is thorough. So you're adding, you're expanding, you're trying to get new people to be on the board who both the diversity is really hot and prevalent. We talk about it a lot. We don't do it so well. So how do we get a broader pool of people?
You're on mute.
Oh dear. No, I'm not. So I don't know if you can't hear me. Maybe other people hear me?
Okay,
You're good. Captioner.
Thank you. Thank you.
Captioner hears you.
Thank you.
Mark, you're still on mute.
Mary hears him.
He's not on mute. He's fine.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Mark.
Thank you. So getting a broader array of people, both in diversity and all sorts of people, having families, having people with different disabilities. So having a broader array of who represent, and all of this is that, and we really haven't talked about this yet, but the council plays a really important role in modeling behavior. And I don't think we appreciate this, that people look to the council. When the council can succeed at being more diverse, at funding, a big part that all the councils put out grants. So who is it who's getting the grants? Are they smaller groups? Are they groups that comes from diverse backgrounds? Are they groups that maybe aren't sophisticated enough? Maybe they're not have grant writers who are writing all these things or can pay for you. So these are a number of places that we can get people to be included in different ways. This is broader than, so the individuals provide the board orientation. A board orientation helps people get up to speed quicker. So these are all about how people can not just be present, I know when I first came on to DD Council, I didn't have a clue what was going on. Most people that we interviewed talked about taking 2 and 3 years for them to feel competent as a council member. This is across the board. Orientations help people get up to speed quicker. That's really the purpose. And again, it really isn't understood. An orientation can be nice, but what we're trying to do is have people understand how the council works so that they can they can ask questions. They can bring their whole self to the conversation, and they don't have to simply be afraid. I'm not going to speak up because I'm going to look stupid. Individual attends board meetings, retreats, and fellowship opportunities. So going back to people with disabilities and new board members, oftentimes people are left out of those things. People come to the board, people come to the council, but a lot of those decisions get happen when people are breaking bread together, when people are having drinks at the bar, when people are having retreats. The council has an opportunity, again, this is pre-COVID and hopefully now, maybe even after COVID, where people are actually coming together and sharing those. Board management is committed to inclusion. Obviously, councils are, you wouldn't have people. So you're making commitments to that, and you're pursuing the budget is board is a budget for inclusion supports. Oftentimes what we hear is the council, their board saying, oh, we provide anything that the person needs or asks for. Well, that's a really different thing from having a budget so that the person doesn't have to feel like they're beholding or, gee, I have to ask for, so I need extra transportation. I need extra time. I need to stay overnight, even though the meeting's not overnight. I need to stay overnight, or I need to come in for the whole day. I need to come in for the day before, just because the way, my disability works, the transportation, that's not in the budget. That's not so when you put money in the budget, it's making a commitment that you're going to put forth and support people to be on the committees and groups. The next there is deliberate communication. David?
So what it was, Mark?
Deliberate communication.
Deliberate communication is when you, to really have to understand information and really to receive and understand information and have different devices to help you to have devices to help you be a better participator in the work that you do on the boards and the committees.
Thank you, David. Sarah?
Deliberate communication can be important because you need to also understand what the board's work is, because in order to help contribute to it, you need to understand what it is and what the mission of the board is.
Thanks, Sarah. Some of the details are using technology. We've had huge advances in technology. Nobody quite knows what ChatGPT is going to offer us, but things that can help people get more understanding, get more communication, voice to text, all kinds of things that people are doing. Individual communication style, interpreters, you have interpreters here, you have closed captioning. How can we use those things to help people be more comprehensive, more understanding, making materials more easy for people to understand? Individuals called upon when people are new or when people feel they're not included. People sit in the back of the room, people don't speak up. And so if somebody can be called upon, George or John or David, we haven't heard from you. Again, it's just good practice that we want to do that with anybody, but involving people, making people feel like their voice is valued and want to be heard. User-friendly document practices, plain language, large type, color coding, not using jargon. All of these things actually help everybody. It turns out that there's a lot of people who have trouble, not only English, certainly people, English is a second language, but a lot of the people, and there's a lot of shame. There's a tremendous amount of shame. So almost nobody will admit that they have literacy problems or reading problems. And yet we think in most of our documents, at college level. So can we drop them down to being at the 6th grade to 7th grade to 8th grade, as a matter of fact? We recently worked with the Pennsylvania Needy Council and working on that. So there's a lot of instructions, there's a lot of expertise around plain language and how can we do better at that. Board is user-friendly meetings so that there's enough time. I talked earlier about having committees. that we're not jamming everything into the agenda so much that we're sorry we don't have time to hear from you. Rush. We're we only have 2 minutes. When I first went on the Pennsylvania ED Council, we had that meeting to make a decision on a $400,000 project, vocational supportive work, and people just didn't feel comfortable. And yet here it was, people had to make a decision. So, can we build in structures to allow time that people get to make these? Can we structure the meetings in a way so that we don't end up in that place, that we have lots of time? And that's where councils particularly need a lot of lead time to be giving people time to be thinking about these decisions so they don't end up at the sort of end of year typical governmental process. And people get very frustrated when they don't have the time to make these decisions. Full participation, David?
When you being a full participation means when you are involved in all the work that you do with the organization and with the board, and really being a full member, and really just focus on how to make the organization and the board better, and also yourself, and really just being better in as a board member, to really give it your all.
Thanks, David. Sarah?
Full participation is being included in the work.
Thanks,
to
Sarah.
to help fully participate in having your ideas heard and having your ideas heard.
I think that really sums it up, of having your ideas heard, having people want to hear what you're saying. These are a number of just sort of techniques that help: frequent breaks, we're training. Councils deal with very complicated issues. They are hard to understand. Council staff are dealing with this all the time. How can you help the board understand, or in the future, understand supportive work, understand supported decision-making, understand the ramifications of guardianship, understand people get out of institution, all these issues that are coming to the fore and continue to come to the fore. How can we help people understand them? Having committees, you hear me talk about committees and subcommittees, is moving the work to the committees and subcommittees allows more time, allows more real participation of people. Ruth and Marie talk about the idea of having 2 more individuals. This comes from all extensive research on women serving on board of directors. And when boards have actually 3 people is when there's really an impact and people listen to. When there's simply one person, it really is tokenism in many ways. And in contact with the individual between meetings, helping people understand what's going on. Number 4, meaningful ways. David? Contributions.
Like to help the board to start different committees and different work groups, and really having roles like as the chair, the vice chair, help lead the committees, and really focus on how we can change the dynamics.
Thanks, David. We've seen several councils that have had moving people with disabilities into the people with development disabilities, people with intellectual disabilities, into some of the officer roles. That's where people really learn a lot. Sarah, what can...
Meaningful ways. People can be when people with lived experience are in leadership roles, and they feel like they're more feel like they're in more control.
Thanks, Sarah.
Or they have more say, and maybe feel like their voices are heard.
This is where many of the councils can actually create committees, subcommittees, task force, roles, responsibilities, things that people can actually do. Sorry, Sarah, go ahead.
And also make sure that they have the accommodations that they need to help them contribute to the work.
Thank you, Sarah. Really good point, what we're talking about. So here's Sarah talk about areas that are people have a particular interest in. So there's something people could focus on, whether it's early intervention or vocational getting jobs, or but there's things people can focus themselves. One of the things that's helpful is to help the person focus in on an area that's a particular concern or interest, and then they can make a bigger contribution in trying to contribute to everything. The agenda, can people get something on the agenda that's their issue? Can they get, input into what the agenda is? The training we talked about, being able to get up to speed quicker, being able to make a contribution that people understand. And these are very complicated issues that council deals with, not only around money, but around, always the cutting edge issues. Board assignments, David talked about mentors. Is there someone that person could be paired up with to be doing some of the work so that they can actually make a contribution? And their duties and carried out, explained, help for people so that people aren't simply kind of floundering. So these are all supports, scaffolding that can be available, provided, help the people to be able to be making a bigger contribution for what people are doing. Influence, David?
Being at the table and being not just being at the table, but really having influence on how the board looks and helping them to help them create the agenda, and not just agenda, but like the retreat, and really be hands-on on a lot of the stuff that goes on at the board, and just helping them change how they look as an organization.
Thanks, David. Some of the things are the co-leadership. David talked about being a co-leader on the board of directors that he was on. People are thinking that their issues are heard and they're spoken to. Did I miss you, Sarah?
Individuals feel like they are making a difference. Yeah, they feel like they're making a difference to try to accomplish what needs to be accomplished.
Thank you, Sarah. Sorry to skip you. Some of the other pieces, bylaws and policies. One of the advantages of having things that are in bylaws is that you can have a chairperson who is really gung-ho and a believer and helping, and then they leave, and then the next person doesn't implement those things. So that's why having policies that talk about how a number of people be on a board, the council has mandates, how people will be included, and then board rotation. One of the issues that we see is that frequently the same person with disabilities stays on the committee, the board, the group for years and years and years. And that robs other people from learning. It robs that person from gaining other experiences. And it robs the council from learning how do you recruit people. And so if you're not having to go through that, you're not gaining those skills and that knowledge. The last area we have is mentors. And David is a certified mentor in Michigan. He's now in Arizona, but has done mentoring for people for a long time.
Being a mentor is, and having the experience of being having the experience of being on the board and really helping another person that's just coming on there and really just helping them relax and really just being a peer to them. Like you understand that what they are going through, you've been there, you pretty much just being an ally and really helping them, making it easier for them to be super realized and have more of a voice when they join.
Thanks, David. Sarah?
And mentors also help people make sure they have what they need to be successful in serving on a board as well.
Thanks, Sarah. We're really strong supporters of mentors. We've helped almost a dozen organizations create mentors programs now. And we find it's one of the most effective ways to help people. So mentors provided. Some of the other things that, of course, councils are doing, transportation and expenses, oftentimes paying expenses in advance. People don't have the money to put out. Many of these things are people won't share. You ask them because there's a shame. People don't want to say, I need something extra. Materials sent 1 week in advance, so people have the opportunity to read, to get somebody to help them read, to understand, and easy to read formats that are easier to comprehend. Pre-meetings are one of the pieces we found, again, extraordinarily helpful. And pre-meetings end up starting out for people with disabilities and end up many people joining them, going over the agenda, talking about, wow, that helped me too. And also then you're not segregating people. And who sits where is really all about power that you're generally uncomfortable in our field talking about, but who has the power, who is powerless, how do you share power, how do you share influence, and all of these pieces that contribute to people feeling and being able to make a meaningful contribution. With that, we're going to go to breakout room 2. We're going to do 10 minutes, and we're going to talk about what would help you be a better member of a council, a board, or committee. We're going back to the same groups. Hopefully we can get people into the right groups now. David, are you ready to send people in groups for 10 minutes?
And we are, and if you need CART closed captioning, just leave your breakout room and you'll end up in the.
Welcome back, welcome back.
Go back.
Takes us a few minutes to get everybody back in here. I hope you had as good time as we did in our session. Welcome back. Welcome back. Okay. Well, I hope you had a good time in that session thinking about, what we're trying to do is thinking about your own experiences as you think about how you can help other people of what you're trying to do and connecting with people and how you can better support people. A lot of what we need, although it's a little bit different model, but it's really what the people that we're trying to help support need and trying to reach with some of the things. So that's what we're trying to think about. The other piece, as I said to you, is really that the council serves as model. People really look to the model, and I think the power that the council has is underestimated of the influence that the council has, because the council has really two pieces. It has public policy that it involves itself from advocacy in, and it has grant making. And people really look to the council. One of the other pieces that the councils have tremendous opportunity in this area is really to the grantees. So almost every council is funding, 10, 20, 30 grantees. And to what extent, asking, helping, training, supporting, or just modeling, how are they having people with disabilities serve on their committees, their boards. Almost every grantee you have as a board of directors. And so maybe it's not mandating these things, but it's helping people. How can you both the council as a model? If the council can do it, then certainly your grantees can do it. Now you can help them. So with that, let me sort of begin to wind ourselves up here. What we have as available for anybody else, other pieces that we've done and can do and would be happy to do. There's the 6 modules of training. We've done this as an introduction with you. There's a self-assessment I'm going to touch on a little bit, work plan and the peer mentoring. Peer mentoring is probably the most powerful technique process that we found that makes a difference in people's lives. You heard David talk about it. You heard Sarah talk about it. David is actually a peer mentor and has mentored many people, but really makes a difference. We don't have time to go through it now. We have a whole module on that, but the peer mentoring, one thing, everybody getting a mentor, most councils have ended up providing a mentor to everybody. So it's not a segregated piece. So everybody gets, primarily when they're new, for 3 months, 6 months, whatever period of time it is. Nobody's forced to do it. And then you also have people in council, who's really the ideal model. There are different ways of doing mentoring, but somebody in a council is serving as a mentor, and they get to learn and think about and form relationships. And that's what we found to be the most effective, getting people speeded up on their ability to contribute. These are the 6 areas that we talked about and went through. These are the modules that we provide training in each of these areas. But this is really what I wanted to share with you. All of these handouts are in the Google Drive, and Anne's going to drop in a link, and we'll send it. Cheryl's going to send it to you. But you can and actually the actual PowerPoint as a PDF is up there too. There's several other sort of backdrops, handouts that we have around mentoring and some of the pieces that we would refer you to. This is a assessment that we have the group do, and it's found to be really effective. And what we do is a live action, and you could do this yourself and have people go through this. And what happens is that people come up and say, as a board provided orientation, everybody in the groups, oh yeah, we do that well. Then one person will say, well, wait a second, didn't work for me, or I didn't get invited, or I didn't get to. And so you really get to hone in on where are the strengths and where are the weaknesses? Mentors, an example, gets assistance with transportation, for example. You know, the council says, oh, we do that and work. And someone will say, well, wait a second, you know, we weren't able to let me come for the day before, or I needed a little bit of help with my mother, or whatever it was. And so what you do is you tease out some of these places that you're doing well and not as well. The most powerful part of this is at the end of this, you get an immediate feedback. And this is a bar chart showing that group. And for example, here, this shows the supports and mentors at 80%, meaning they did really well in that area. And so here's the deliberate communication. So they didn't do as well. So the council, in terms of moving forward, can focus in on something. So it's not like you have a Chinese menu, we have to do all these things. That's what so often accessibility things are. You can say, okay, we want to work on this one area. What can we do better to be a better communicator with our members? So this has been really helpful. It's found helpful to help the councils, committees, boards. What's the next step? Where do we want to focus on and move forward? This is the work plan that we simply work with people on, you know, what are the next steps that people want to do? And really it's really coming to, for a few minutes that we have of, you know, questions that people have. Here's a poll that's up. We really would appreciate the requirement of providing information. How well did the training go? So we really would appreciate if people would fill out these things that are on your screen now. It's a big part. All of this is funded by the federal government. NCADD is from ACL, the Administration on Community Living, which is part of Health and Human Services. These are federal funds. They go from federal government to the state. NCADD gets as a direct piece that they're doing under the technical assistance piece that's here. But it's all federal funding, and the more we have people responding to these answers, the better that NCADD can respond, and everybody's happier. So, and you're going to help Cheryl, who you can see Cheryl smiling on the, she's got to sit and make up all these into reports and whatnot. So let me just stop for a few minutes. We have anybody can unmute yourself and just raise your hand, speak up, put something in the chat box, anything anybody wants to share with us for a moment. You're on. Well, with that, I'm going to just ask you if you would, and we'll wind up here and bring ourselves back. And here's the resources. These are all the things that we talked about. All these are up on the Google Drive. They're available to you. And it's dropping this drive in the chat box. And also Cheryl will be sending it out to you later. You can come and just click on it and get all of these pieces that we put forward for you. We'd appreciate if you just put a few words in the chat box of how well we did, how well the soft the seats are, how well the temperature was, how well the voice was, anything that was great, anything that was, you know, issue or problem. We'd appreciate that. With that, we're going to turn it back over to Cheryl and Robin, and we thank you. We really appreciate your time, energy, and effort with all of this.
Mary, the comments in the chat are amazing.
Yes.
They are amazing. I particularly like, you know, the one that says we learned a lot of information, and that's been the general consensus. So thank you. Sorry about that interrupting.
No, thank you so much, Ann, and thank you so much to Mark and David and Ruthie and Mary and all of the facilitators. A big thank you to Sarah and to David for sharing your thoughts and experiences about the amazing work you guys have both done. And we thank everyone for joining us. We will be taking I think 30-minute break before the next session. Cheryl, please nod your head if that is correct. And the link, it is a separate link from this session currently. So please make sure that you completely log out of this call and go to your calendar invite for the second. As a reminder, the Dropbox link or Google Drive link was put in the chat, but we will be posting recordings and everything on the itechhelp.org website, but just give us maybe, I don't know, 36 hours just to have a moment to kind of take out some of the information that, you know, that only the information that is helpful. But again, we thank you. Thank you to Mark again. Donna, thank you. And Cheryl, of course, thank you. And we'll see you guys all in about 30 minutes. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a great rest of your day.